It's Friday, January 9th, 2009, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Good day, Stashers. Welcome to the podcast. We've made it through the first full week of 2009. Friday couldn't have gotten here soon enough. We're sure looking forward to the weekend. Now, before we get to today's daily audio stash, I've got to remind you that this Thursday, the 15th, is the deadline in our NORML's Pro Cannabis Ad Campaign contest. All you got to do is put together a 30 or 60 second web video, upload it, and you could win your share of $10,000 in cash prizes. Listen later in the podcast for our advertisement for more details, or just check out norml.org. Now, coming up on today's podcast, we're going to be speaking with Steve Bloom from CelebStoner.com for our Friday Celeb Stoner Entertainment Update. We'll be looking at that call for decriminalization in El Paso and a look at the upcoming tour for the reunified Phish. And speaking of music, for our musical break today, we get a special guest here joining us at the stash. Jared from the group Head PE is here promoting his new album, New World Orphans, which is available through Suburban Noise Records. Check them out at suburbannoiserecords.com and check out the stash for more links. Finally, we've got a conversation with the executive director of NORML, Alan St. Pierre. We're going to be discussing the issues in cannabis law reform that are bound to get a lot of attention in the incoming Congress. Alan also lets us know that the next upcoming couple of weeks are going to be very high profile for marijuana law reform in the mainstream media. So set those DVRs. We got a lot of good shows coming up in the next couple of weeks. And one final thing, this weekend we're upgrading the back end for the Stash blog at stash.norml.org, upgrading to WordPress version 2.7. So check out some of the changes over the weekend. You'll see all sorts of great features that should inspire some more community on the blog, including a way of previewing comments instantly and some better polling. So check that out at stash.norml.org. It's only 3 more weeks to my birthday. You can buy me anything with a G on it. Or you can just sit back and listen to your NORML Daily Audio Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 13 states today, and THCF has clinics in 8 of those states. Our doctors help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms such as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help you obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, Montana, and now Michigan. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our normal daily audio stash, Hemp Headlines. Worcester, Massachusetts wants bigger pot penalties than Question 2 allows. Hey there, boys and girls. Having trouble understanding the concept of federalism? You remember this vaguely from high school, don't you? About how cities and counties can make laws, but those laws are subordinate to state laws, and state laws are subordinate to federal laws? Well, apparently they have trouble with this concept in Worcester, Massachusetts. A move is in the works on the city council to have the city establish a civil penalty and even the possibility of criminal indictment for the use of marijuana on public property under the control of the city. Under the ordinance being sought by the councilors, the use of marijuana would not be allowed on city streets, sidewalks, public ways, parks, playgrounds, public buildings, school grounds, parking lots, and any other area under control of the city. The passage of Question 2 reduces the penalty for less than an ounce of marijuana to a $100 civil fine. The three city councilors would like to see the city at least be able to assess an additional fine to those using marijuana on city property. Prior to Question 2 becoming law this month, the State Executive Office of Public Safety encouraged cities and towns to pass new penalties for using marijuana in public. Attorney General Martha Coakley has even offered a sample bylaw that would include a $300 civil penalty and the possibility of criminal indictment for the use of marijuana on public property. Excuse me? The state law enacted by 65% of the voters says, notwithstanding any general or special law to the contrary, possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana shall only be a civil offense, subjecting an offender who is 18 years of age or older to a civil penalty of $100 and forfeiture of the marijuana, but not to any other form of criminal or civil punishment or disqualification. Neither the Commonwealth nor any of its political subdivisions or their respective agencies, authorities, or instrumentalities may impose any form of penalty, sanction, or disqualification on an offender for possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana. There you go, kids. A simple lesson in drug war federalism. State laws say pot is bad, so local laws that say it's good need not be obeyed. But if a state law says pot is good, then local laws that say it's bad must be obeyed. Got it? Massachusetts police scramble to codify new marijuana bust procedures. Voters elected last November to remove the criminal penalty for possession of less than an ounce of marijuana. Since the law went into effect January 1st, offenders are now subject to a civil fine. That fine, like a parking ticket, can be appealed in court. Lancaster Police Chief Kevin Lamb said last week that he still has questions and concerns over the new law. Quote, "There's going to be problems if you issue a $100 ticket and they don't pay it. Who is going to chase them around for it?" he said. "There are all kinds of issues that are going to come up in the next few months." End quote. Lamb also referenced a hypothetical situation in which one of his officers could sit in a police cruiser smoking a joint, and the only thing the chief could do is have a citation issued. No further disciplinary action could be taken because the new law classifies the possession of less than 1 ounce as a civil offense. Conversely, Lamb noted, an officer could be fired if found smoking a regular cigarette in that same cruiser. Lamb said, quote, "That just doesn't make sense." End quote. It's nice to see that Massachusetts has gone to such great lengths to employ the mentally handicapped. Really, are you guys that bummed out about not being able to just cuff and stuff pot smokers that you've lost all sense? Chief Lamb, the new law makes marijuana possession like a parking ticket. Who is chasing around the folks who don't pay parking tickets? Nobody. But if you have an unpaid ticket, then what? You get cited for contempt. You get a bench warrant. And the next time you interface with a police officer, you're going to jail. And you really think you have no grounds to fire a police officer smoking cannabis in a police cruiser? First off, is this a huge problem in Massachusetts? And do you not have the standard human resources approved legal mumbo jumbo in your employment contracts about conduct unbecoming an officer or a morality clause or something? Jeez, the way you guys whine, you'd think that we haven't seen 12 other states deal with exactly the same situation. New Mexico finalizes medical marijuana distribution rules. The New Mexico Department of Health has finalized regulations for the registry identification cards and a production distribution system for its medical cannabis program. The regulations provide for two kinds of licensed producers: a qualified patient who can produce up to 4 mature plants and 12 seedlings for personal use only, and a nonprofit private entity that can produce a total of 95 mature plants and seedlings and an inventory of usable marijuana that reflects current patient needs at any time. The health secretary will consider the health needs of qualified patients and the public safety in determining the number and location of licenses that the Department of Health approves. The Department of Health also revised its regulations regarding the registry identification cards after receiving feedback during 3 public hearings. The regulation allows patients to possess 6 ounces of medical marijuana. Due to concerns that the amount was inadequate, the revised rule allows the department to consider an amount greater than 6 ounces if a practitioner explains why a larger dose is needed. The department's Medical Advisory Board will hold a public hearing 9 a.m. January 15th at Los Griegos Community Center, 1231 Candelaria Northwest in Albuquerque, to review petitions to include new health conditions in the program. The board's 8 board-certified physicians will consider petitions that have been previously submitted to the Department of Health. To apply for the medical cannabis program, to be a licensed producer, or to petition for a new condition, go to the New Mexico Department of Health or call the Medical Cannabis Program Coordinator at 505-827-2321. Well, there may be a silver lining in Bill Richardson stepping down as Obama's Commerce Secretary. He'll get to stay on as governor of New Mexico as this groundbreaking situation plays out. Remember that California and Colorado's dispensary systems grew out of private initiative, whereas New Mexico is the first medical marijuana state to mandate the distribution of medicine to patients. Girl reports dad's marijuana plants. Manatee, Florida. A Palmetto man has been arrested on a charge of growing marijuana after his daughter reported his operation to a school resource officer, according to a Manatee County Sheriff's Office report. Based on the tip, deputies early Wednesday went to the home of Patrick C. Allerton, age 63, to conduct a welfare check on the girl, and saw a bright light and blue tarp through an open window with an odor of marijuana wafting out. Threatened with a search warrant, Allerton agreed to allow deputies to search his home. They found 8 marijuana plants and 7 grams of pot in a dresser. Deputies also found more than $3,600 cash in the dresser, along with drug paraphernalia, the sheriff's report said. Allerton said he grew the marijuana for personal use and never had any intent of selling it, according to the sheriff's report. Deputies arrested Allerton on charges of felony manufacture of a controlled substance and possession of marijuana. He was being held in the Manatee County Jail Thursday on $10,500 bond. Students are often encouraged to report drug activity and other crimes to their school resource officers, Palmetto Police Lieutenant Scott Tyler said. Quote, "I would like to think drug education that begins early in school has created an environment where students feel comfortable reporting what they see," end quote, Tyler said. Yes, and I wondered, Lieutenant Tyler, if during that high school drug education, you tell these teenagers that turning in their parents for their personal cannabis use means their parents will miss their high school graduation because their parents will be serving a 5 to 6 year prison sentence. I wonder if you tell young teen girls like Miss Allerton that she can forget about that new car or college money or a nice dress for prom, since her parents will be spending all that money on bail, legal fees, and, if found guilty, a $5,000 to $6,000 fine. I wonder, Lieutenant Tyler, If you took any courses on the history of communist China or Hitler's Germany when you were getting your criminal justice degree, they had quite a deal of success getting their children to snitch on their parents.
Hello, Chicago!
Barack Obama has been elected the 44th President of the United States. But will he bring us, the cannabis community, the change we can believe in?
It's an issue of doctors prescribing medical marijuana. I think that should be appropriate.
NORML is asking you to take action and help us hold President-elect Obama to his word with our $10,000 pro-cannabis law reform ad contest.
When I was a kid, I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Just make a 30 or 60-second video or flash animation that answers the question, what should President Obama do about pot? You can submit as many entries as you like, and winning videos will be featured on NORML's website and television campaigns.
What I'm not going to be doing is using Justice Department resources to try to circumvent state laws on this issue.
The grand prize is $3,500, so enter early and enter often.
Well, I would not punish doctors if it's prescribed. That may require some changes in federal law.
Contest deadline is January 15th, 2009. Check NORML.org for official contest rules.
The war on drugs has been a utter failure, and I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
President Obama, we couldn't agree more. Marijuana culture is infused throughout America and the world. As we round out the week, we take a look at the 420 phenomenon in movies, TV, music, and sports with former High Times editor and author of Pot Culture, Steve Bloom, in our CelebStoner.com Entertainment News. It's time for our entertainment report, and we turn to Steve Bloom from CelebStoner.com. Steve, welcome back to the show, and Happy New Year.
Hey, same to you, Russ. Happy New Year to everybody out there in Stashland.
Yeah, we got all sorts of great stories that are popping up here as we get the new administration, and people are talking about the issue of legalization. It's really quite surprising. We heard about this a little earlier from an Arizona attorney general who kind of brought it up sideways in a conversation. But now, this week, we got the city council from El Paso, Texas, weighing in on the matter. Tell us a little bit about that story.
So, I was watching CNN one day this week, I think it was Wednesday, and I hear Rick Sanchez talking about a report that they were going to do about the councilman in El Paso who was talking about ending the drug war, and that there was a vote in the city council of El Paso that passed an 8-0 vote to look into, kind of urge the government, the federal government, to study, the drug war and basically come to some conclusions that might end it. And as it turns out, it's a fellow named Beto O'Rourke, B-E-T-O, and he's a three-term congressman, a councilman there, and it's interesting. His commentary is like stuff that, we've heard a million times at NORML conferences and DPA conferences. He's pretty much studied, what's out there in the drug policy community and repeated it more or less, verbatim. His big concern, it seems, because El Paso is on the border of Mexico and Ciudad Juarez is its sister city, and probably people have been hearing quite a bit about the problems that Mexico is having with the drug cartels down there and all the murders. There have been 1,600 people in the last year who were killed in Ciudad Juarez, and O'Rourke actually says that the mayor and the city council members of Ciudad Juarez live in El Paso. They're so afraid to live in Ciudad Juarez. So his point was really that the drug war, is causing this type of problem that's so close to the border of the U.S. and he's fearing it's going to spill over, into El Paso. I don't know if it has already, but that seemed to be his main reason to basically say that the war on drugs is essentially making narcotics traffickers richer. They're literally in control of our sister city. You literally have a failed city in Ciudad Juarez, and we need to rethink this war on drugs, and we ask that all options be on the table, including the ending of prohibition. So what happened was he made a proposal in the city council. It was passed by an 8-0 vote to look into this, and then the mayor there vetoed it. So but he got a lot of attention. He was also interviewed by the El Paso Times, and he went at length, a little bit longer than he spoke to CNN. We're urging the government to begin an open and honest dialogue about the prohibition of narcotics in the U.S. We have hundreds of thousands of citizens in jail on drug offenses. By any measure I can look at, the drug war has been a complete failure. The drug war isn't working. We're asking for a change, and all options need to be on the table, including the ending of prohibition of narcotics. He went on to say things like he's aware of what's going on around the country, such as he says the experts might conclude their prohibition. He wants kind of a big study or a committee on this. The experts may conclude that prohibition makes sense, but we can focus much more on treatment or on some forms of regulation, like the experiment that's going on in California and a dozen other states, medical marijuana, or maybe certain narcotics are legalized and regulated. Once you regulate, you can then be able to work with users not as criminals, but as people who have a health problem. It can be addressed as a public health issue. And went on to say, bring up the point about generations of young inner city men who are spending their lives in jail. And he says, I want a serious conversation to take place. I'm really hopeful in this new administration and new Congress will be given a serious airing. So later that night on CNN, right-wing nut Lou Dobbs called him a local yokel, and he praised the political coverage of the political courage of the mayor for turning down the resolution. So it's just something that kind of like blew up on the border there, and like a little border skirmish. We'll see where it goes. It seems like I wouldn't be surprised if Beto O'Rourke is the lead speaker at the next DPA conference, and but it's just an indication that politicians are starting to embrace the notion that the war on drugs is a failure. As Obama has said, but hasn't really stated it lately. And the question is, what are they going to do about it?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that Lou Dobbs profile. I had caught that on the air on CNN. Unfortunately, out here on the West Coast, they had also pumped in a piece on Ann Coulter that cut off Lou Dobbs' reaction to it. So you guys out on the East Coast got to catch him saying all that local yokel, and I guess he got really red in the face and upset about the whole thing, right?
Yeah, he did. I mean, it was his typical, because Lou Dobbs is always on this immigration issue, and he's very, very right wing when it comes to immigration, and so this is just another indication of the problems that are being caused partially due to drugs and immigration, and they just want to bring drugs into the country, and it's just I mean, he's not looking at it in any sensible way, but just to like call him a local yokel was silly.
Yeah, and on other marijuana news in the government, we've got the word out that Barack Obama may be tapping Sanjay Gupta, the CNN doctor, as the next Surgeon General, and this doesn't bode too well apparently for us marijuana smokers, huh?
Well, sort of yes and no. Very quickly, an article that Gupta had written in Time magazine. He has a column in Time magazine. Gupta is a CNN, celebrity doctor, so to speak. He's a surgeon, and he had written back in 2006 in response to the Nevada and Alaska initiatives that were proposing taxing and regulating marijuana. He wrote a column basically saying, I would vote no on pot. And then pretty much, he said a lot of favorable things about medical marijuana and a lot of negative things about, say, recreational marijuana. So he's good on one side and bad on the other. And it's, to be honest, I mean, you wouldn't really expect, a guy like him to be, saying marijuana is okay across the board. But nevertheless, this is where he stands, and people should know about it. I mean, I wasn't, super surprised. In his column, he goes, marijuana isn't very good for you. True, there are health benefits for some patients. Several recent studies, including one from the Scripps Research Institute, show THC can help slow the progress of Alzheimer's. Other studies have shown THC to be very effective anti-nausea treatment for people, cancer patients, as of course we know. Medical cannabis has shown promise relieving pain in patients. But I suspect that most of the people eager to vote yes on the new ballot measures aren't suffering from glaucoma, Alzheimer's, or chemo-induced nausea. Many of them just want to get stoned legally. It's a fairly standard, stance, anti-marijuana stance when it comes to recreational use, but pro-medical marijuana. And then he goes to say, why do I care? and he quotes Dr. Nora Volkow from NIDA, who says numerous deleterious health consequences are associated with marijuana's short and long-term use, including the possibility of becoming addicted. What are the other health consequences, he says? Frequent marijuana use can seriously affect your short-term memory. It can impair your cognitive ability. And then he goes in parenthesis, why do you think people call it dope?
Yeah.
And lead to long-lasting depression or anxiety. While many people smoke marijuana to relax, it can have the opposite effect on frequent users, and smoking anything, whether it's tobacco or marijuana, can seriously damage your lung tissue. He concludes, I'm here to tell you, as a doctor, that despite all the talk about medical benefits of marijuana, smoking this stuff is not going to do your health any good. And if you get high before climbing behind the wheel of a car, you will be putting yourself and those around you in danger. So it's real, kind of government propaganda about marijuana that he's, spewing back. So it's not a good sign that he's, really not thinking for himself, because this really sounds like, just read the Partnership for Drug-Free America and kind of like repeat what they say, or whatever it is, the anti, marijuana statements that the government, generally hands out. It seems like, he's handing it out as well. But on the positive side, he's pretty solid on medical marijuana. So, if he does get selected, probably won't be the worst thing.
Yeah.
It's also been brought up that there's a good column by Paul Krugman from the New York Times who kind of went after Gupta on how Gupta had challenged Michael Moore and said that Michael Moore was wrong when he made the movie Sicko, and a lot of his facts and figures were wrong. And it turns out Krugman says everything that Moore pretty much said was right. And again, Michael Moore challenged the U.S. Lack of health care, universal health care, and went around the world and saw places like England and France and Canada and Cuba where you can get all kinds of services for nothing, and whereas here in the U.S. you have to beg, to get anything done for practically nothing, or even co-payments or half payments or whatever. Yeah. So that's another interesting little thing. So, basically he's being grilled now. People really didn't think much about Gupta until this point, and now you kind of have to look at him and say, well, what is he really about?
Yeah. Well, we've got some better news, especially on the entertainment front here for longtime music fans of that Vermont band Phish.
Yes, indeed. Phish are back, as had been promised. They've been kind of leaking out information over the last 3 or 4 months about shows that they're going to start performing this year. The first ones are in first week of March in Virginia, and then they take a break until June, and then they start, a real the first leg of a 2009 tour that's going to begin in New York, in my backyard here. So I'm excited about that. And it's on June 4th and 5th, and then it continues to June 20th and 21st, Alpine Valley in Wisconsin. And so there's 10 dates that they have slotted in. So they have the 2 or 3 in Hampton in Virginia in March, and then they have, I forget if it's 2 or 3, and then you have the 10 that are locked in now. And the big question mark is that in the schedule that they released between June 10th and June 15th, there's no dates, and that's right around the time of Bonnaroo. The festival, Bonnaroo, is from the 12th to the 14th of June, so most likely they're probably just negotiating with Bonnaroo. And they'll probably headline 2 of the 3 nights at Bonnaroo is my guess, if not all 3. So look forward to that. And that's really the news on the Phish front. I mean, they have some releases that they're putting out as well. It's kind of a big year for jam bands because the Dead are making reuniting. Yeah. Grateful Dead are going to be touring as well, and Phish. So what's going on here? 2009. You got Obama coming into office, and you got Phish and the Dead, coming back out. So all kinds of good things are happening. What's next?
Yeah,
marijuana is going to be legalized.
We can only hope, man. It's looking to be a good year. And Alan St. Pierre over at NORML on their blog has a note up as well about how we're going to get a whole bunch of cannabis documentaries and investigative reports on the mainstream media coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we'll report back on that with you after those are shown. But yeah, you're right. There's something happening here. There's a change.
In the air.
There's change in the air. That's right.
And in the water.
There's something. Yeah. Hey, Steve Bloom from CelebStoner.com. Thanks again for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash.
I want to say one more thing. I just
Sure.
want to alert people to, we're doing a redesign of Celeb Stoner, and it's looking really good. We have a beta version of it, and we're going to probably start breaking it out next week. So look forward to a new look for Celeb Stoner.
Excellent. Yeah, check it out. celebstoner.com. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Bye-bye. Bye, Russ.
Just say no.
No matter what you call it, it's a huge part of popular culture.
Where'd you learn that, Cheech? Drug school.
You don't need weed school. You just need a copy of the new book, Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life.
Hey, this is great, man.
Even if you never smoked marijuana,
I never used marijuana. Sorry.
don't think you smoked marijuana,
I experimented with marijuana a time or two and didn't inhale.
or you used to smoke marijuana,
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Pot Culture by former High Times editor Steve Bloom and Shirley Halperin will answer every question you ever had about marijuana culture.
Has that marijuana made it back up here yet?
Check out Pot Culture, the A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life at Amazon.com or visit potculturebook.com today.
Too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
Here at the Normal Daily Audio Stash, we work hard to change our nation's marijuana laws through education and discussion. But we also take time to relax and unwind with an eclectic mix of pod-safe music from many independent artists. We look for music that speaks to the growing truth about cannabis, or music that speaks to broader themes of freedom, liberty, social justice, equality, and protest. To find out more about the artists and download the music you hear on this podcast, just log on to stash.normal.org. And if you'd like to get your music heard by the online cannabis community, just send us an email at stash@normal.org. All right, folks, it's time for another one of our great musical breaks, and bringing in another group from the Suburban Noise Records stable. We're speaking now with Jared from Head PE. Hey, Jared, welcome to the Stash.
Oh, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. Always glad to have some good music here on the Stash, and I've been following Head PE for a while here, and I'm real excited because you guys have a new album coming out. It's called New World Orphans. People can check it out at newworldorphans.com. And how many albums did this make for you guys?
This is number 7.
Far out, man. So what can we look forward to on this New World Orphans album from Head PE?
Okay, well, New World Orphans has a lot of heavy thrash guitar riffs, but we're famous for, dealing with a bunch of different styles. So, we've got the punk rock in there, heavy metal, thrash, and it's just a lot of hardcore music with a very focused kind of a thematic message,
Yeah, and speaking of your message, you guys are doing what's called you call it the Truth Movement, and I'm imagining, New World Orphans has something to do with kind of the New World Order and all of that. Give folks an idea of the philosophy behind it.
Well, our philosophy as a band and what our followers believe in is that there's definitely more to this world than you're going to find in a public school book or on, cable television or in the newspapers. That there's this kind of backdrop of world history that deserves a second look, and that's what we're kind of into. Just saying there's more than meets the eye to what's going on, politically. Gotcha. Now, on this album, do you guys have some guests joining you for any of these tunes? Yeah, we've got our label mates, the Cottonmouth Kings. We've got Mr. Tech 9, who's like, the world's #1 independent rapper. Yep. And then we've got another guy on our record label that goes by the name of Dirtball. Oh, I love the Dirtball. He's out here in my neck of the woods in Bend, Oregon. Yeah. So it's a really good album. We're really proud of it. We're glad it's finally coming out next week, January 13th. That's right. We want everyone to catch that when it drops on January 13th. And what we're going to be playing for you here is one of the singles from the album. This one's called Renegade. And what is this song about? it's another one of those head PE fight songs, just about like no matter how much, that, let's say, the New World Order tries to hold back the middle class or the common man, that will still always survive and somehow break through, that type of thing. It works on an individual perspective or a broader perspective.
Right on. Now, here at NORML, of course, we're fighting for the end of adult marijuana prohibition. Are there some tracks on the albums that address that subject?
Well, there's no specific track on the album that is like legalized marijuana, but definitely PE has always stood for like the kind of self-medicating, whatever, Obviously, we're against big pharmaceutical companies those are the guys who are, basically against marijuana and any type of self-treatment in a natural way, in a homeopathic way. So we definitely would be, stand behind the whole legalization of marijuana.
Sure, it's just part of the larger issue of, personal freedom and cognitive liberty, right?
Yeah, totally.
Right on. Okay, so now, what's been happening for you guys in Head PE? Have you been touring a lot lately? What's been going on in the last couple of years?
We split our time annually between touring and then, creating. So we just went through a really creative process where we finished the album, delivered that, did a little bit of touring, and now we've just got months of touring ahead of us with the album dropping. We're doing a couple weeks in the U.S., then we're going to Japan for a couple weeks. Then we come back and continue to cover the rest of the U.S. and probably do like some summer tours with the Cottonmouth Kings or whatever.
Oh, that'd be a great show. Now, looking at this philosophy that you're spreading, this truth movement, and talking about the shadow government and the New World Order, I imagine that's something that people here in America are feeling, really feeling when you bring that up. You mentioned touring in Japan and other places. How does that go over with your foreign or your international audiences?
Well, it's definitely everybody is waking up to this whole topic at the same time, which, I was curious about it. I wasn't sure. When we went to Australia, I found out everybody over there is thinking the same things, and I just think that there's something interesting to where the mass consciousness of the planet and kids in other countries are all starting to study and be into the same type of trying to uncover what's going on with the with the governments and stuff.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's starting to kind of bubble up to the surface. All the people, before we would kind of feel like we're isolated. You might think like things are crazy out there, but you didn't realize that everybody else thought that too. And now with the internet and more interconnectivity, I think you're right. I think this is starting to become a global consciousness.
Definitely it is. And like you said, the internet completely helps and lets us know that everyone is thinking along the same lines, whether it's Canada or the UK or, like I said, Australia and Japan for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Now, the website for the album is newworldorphans.com. Are there some other websites that people should know about to get in touch with Head PE?
We've got our normal myspace.com/headpe, HEDPE, and then the New World Orphans is just like more of a focused website that deals with a lot of the books and the websites that we get into, and all that type of shadow information.
Yeah, I'm at the New World Orphans site right now, and there's plenty of links here. It's more than just the album. I mean, there's news, and you got a forum, like a discussion forum, books, videos, and so on. If you want to know more about this album or just the idea of the truth movement here, check out newworldorphans.com. And Jared from Head PE, thanks for joining us here. We're going to play your tune Renegade here right now.
Thank you, man. And I think we're going to be up in that area pretty soon, so keep in touch online, man.
You bet.
Information.
All right, this is Head PE and the new song Renegade.
bleeding, but I'm still breathing. You might hate me, but you can't break me. I might be bleeding, but I'm still breathing.
Almost busted in Laredo, but for reasons that I'd rather not disclose.
I smoke pot, and I like it a lot. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer to use than alcohol. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting responsible marijuana smokers in America. And to learn what you can do to help, please contact NORML at www.norml.org or call toll-free at 888-67-NORML.
The show was long and we were just sitting there, and we'd come to play and not just for the ride.
Time for another one of our visits with the director of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Alan St. Pierre joins us by telephone from Washington, D.C. Alan, welcome back to the Stash.
Good day, Russ.
Well, it's a new year, 2009, and the 111th Congress has just been sworn in, at least most of them. And so I thought we would turn to Washington and you guys out there at the National Office for NORML and get a look at what's coming up for the upcoming Congress with regard to cannabis law reform.
Well, we certainly hope that as the Congress comes back into session, that along with, getting us out of two wars, saving the economy, they could make a little time to come up with some new marijuana laws. And we're certainly hoping that they reintroduce both H.R. 5843 and H.R. 5842, which are the decrim and medical marijuana bills, respectively. The titles will change when they come through the new Congress, but we'd be happy if not a word was added or struck from the previous bills, and we can just get right into subcommittee, hopefully in March or April.
Now, looking forward to the committees and subcommittees that'll have to be hearing these bills, have you got any new information on new faces, senators or representatives that we'll be dealing with?
Thankfully, it breaks reformers' way all the way. The new folks who have come into Congress and who are landing on some of the important committees, because as you can imagine, marijuana cuts across a couple of different jurisdictions, and a couple of different committees are going to take a whack at it. But in all cases, the Democrats have pretty much loaded up with folks a lot from the West Coast and from the great Rocky Mountain states and the New England states, and so the correlation, to be sure, is medical marijuana, and those individuals hopefully will be more inclined to break with reformers on this. So that is the best chance we've got at the moment.
Now, I'm also wondering, just to check the temperature of this issue out there in Washington. I've been speaking this week with a lot of people from our southern border. We did a story on how the Attorney General of Arizona was toying around with the idea of legalization, and we saw the El Paso City Council recommend legalization. Do you feel like this Mexican drug war and the violence that is associated with it and the corruption that's associated with it, is it starting to come across the border? And if so, is it starting to register in the minds of the representatives there in Washington?
Well, I don't know if it's yet found its way to, as you can imagine, the folks in Washington are always the last to get it. But those on the ground, particularly when you mention the Big Bend area of Texas, which is where certainly El Paso is out near, and the border areas of Las Cruces, New Mexico, and the areas around south of Phoenix, to be sure, in Arizona, they have been dealing with a border drug war for almost 40-plus years. They have seen it all down there, and it doesn't matter whether there's hemostat balloons, that there are fences and electronic monitoring devices out there. It hasn't stopped the flow of illegal drugs coming from Central and South America and Mexico into the United States. And now that the violence is so profound, so obscene, 5,000 plus dead a year associated with just drug trafficking, that it has now forced some of these local politicians to confront the most obvious solution that has always been there that they have been too timid to engage in, and that is, it's not hard for them to figure out. We don't have a drug war over grapes. We don't have a drug war over tobacco. We don't have a drug war over barley or hops or potatoes, all of which make potent drugs, but they are regulated and they are controlled and they are taxed. And so these folks, these politicians who out sort of truly where the rubber meets the road and have to answer to constituents whose lives are truly in danger, it almost seems self-evident that after all these years, these decades, they are now gelling towards the obvious solution of asking Washington and their state capitals to move towards a system of tax and control, because everything else has not worked. And if we were to go to a greater extreme of militarism, and that's what we're getting, and certainly the New York Times yesterday had a disturbing piece about how the current administration would like to further militarize that border. Well, if past is prologue, what will happen? There will be more violence, there will be more drugs, the drugs will be cheaper, the drugs will be more potent, and children will have more access to them. Yeah. None of the goals set forward by any sane policymaker in this country would be met under those circumstances. So, in some ways, again, it's almost self-evident that these border politicians are having to, almost by no choice, agitate that there be some form of decriminalization or legalization, or they really will be living on a major militarized drug border zone for 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, we spoke with Rusty Fleming, who's the director of a great new movie, Drug Wars, Silver or Lead, that investigated this whole Mexican drug war phenomenon, and he pointed out how 70% of the income of these Mexican drug cartels derives from the trafficking of marijuana that could be easily grown in the United States and sold legally. And the point being that you take 70% of any business's bottom line away, and you're going to end that business.
For almost 35 years, economists and those who certainly study international relations have always seen this incredible disparity of income between Mexico and the United States, and realize that as long as drugs can fetch such high succour in the United States, such an inflated price, that it's just going to set up this terrible dynamic of not only violence and corruption of politicians, law enforcement, and military on both sides of the border, but it will not achieve the stated goals. And again, I just remind listeners that, for someone like myself in my early 40s, we have reduced tobacco use in my lifetime by half. Deadly, it's addictive, it was subsidized by the government for years, and yet we haven't made it illegal. We don't measure people's pee, we don't take away people's kids, we don't take away their student loans. We've achieved this laudable public health goal by employing rational science, reasonable public health education, and that all of that is in fact reinforced by the science and the real-life experience of people who use, say, tobacco too much or alcohol too much or pills too much. So we really are moving through, in many respects, generational change in this country, and I think the generation of politicians on the border, this generation is no longer going to sit by and have their experience in this life tainted by America's drug war.
Yeah. Now, one other thing happening in Washington, D.C. that we ought to get your opinion on would be Barack Obama naming some of his team for the upcoming administration, and specifically his naming of Dr. Sanjay Gupta from CNN as the potential Surgeon General. How will that affect medical marijuana at the federal level, do you think?
Well, it's going to be interesting. Sanjay has actually written a couple of different pieces over the years, including a notable piece in Time magazine, but the proviso of that is that he seems to make a distinction between the use of marijuana for non-medical purposes as compared to medical purposes. My gut feeling is that given his druthers, he wouldn't be arresting people who are sick, dying, or sense-threatened if their doctor would have them use medical cannabis. I just think he's too enlightened and too culturalized a doctor to not be so malevolent as to want to arrest and prosecute and potentially incarcerate somebody who is sick or dying. So my gut feeling says that he'd probably be a lot better than some of our prior Surgeon Generals on this topic, but at the same time, he has written pretty prolifically about marijuana, and some of it has been very much a buy-in of bad science, stereotypes, and in some ways I don't blame him that much. He works for CNN, he works in the mainstream media. I think those of us who are wonks probably overappreciate what these reports mean and how they're reported in the media, but I'm sort of torn a little bit. I think he's generally a good guy. He's certainly a very well-educated physician and surgeon, so I think he's got to be a lot better than Edward Koop. He's got to be a lot better than the guy that just retired recently, who, when he was asked about medical marijuana, he would always just say it's a farce or it is just an excuse for patients to get high. I don't hear that from Dr. Gupta.
Yeah, we can hope that he is more like the Dr. Elders type of Surgeon General when she was supporting medical marijuana.
She should, and having been at that table at the National Press Club in the early 90s when Dr. Elders was the Surgeon General, and it was our table that forwarded the question to her, asking her about marijuana, and she went on and gave this incredibly expansive answer about marijuana. She thought it should be legal, and that she thought medical marijuana was a given, and of course that was just about the end of her political career.
Yeah. Well, we'll pay attention to Dr. Gupta's confirmation. So far, Representative Conyers, John Conyers from Michigan, has voiced some concerns about not supporting Dr. Gupta's nomination, but we'll see how that all shakes out. And we'll keep in touch with you, Alan, out there in Washington to keep track of what's happening throughout this 111th Congress and this new Obama administration. Thanks for...
It's going to be the busiest year for marijuana law reform in the last 40. There's not many things I'd guarantee, but after this last 2008 and all the major changes that are afoot and the funding that is coming in the door, this is going to be the biggest year for marijuana law reform in any of our lives.
Excellent. Well, we'll keep in touch with you, and thanks again for joining us here on The Stash, Alan.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with some notes about the mainstream media paying attention to the marijuana issue. Check out ABC's 2020 Tonight. There may be a portion of the show dedicated to medical cannabis provider Charles Lynch and his federal case. Coming up on next Friday, January 16, Dateline NBC is doing a 1-hour special on the death of Rachel Hoffman, who we profiled here extensively on the blog. And on CNBC, the business network on cable, they have a special called Marijuana Inc. that will be coming out on January 21st. That's a couple Wednesdays away. Plus, don't forget that the final round of Change.org voting is going on, and Change.org is going to be announcing the top 10 issues to the Obama campaign live at the National Press Club. So lots of mainstream media mentions of marijuana coming up in the next couple weeks. We'll be reporting on here at The Stash, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.